One day after I recorded this podcast, I found out Mark Klein, a good friend of mine in the Toledo film community, passed away. He was not only a great actor, but also a great human being. I provided the link to his GoFundMe in the pinned comment and description of this podcast. If you can donate, please do so. This episode of Spoiler Alert is dedicated to the memory of Mark Klein.
Spoiler alert!
Welcome to Spoiler Alert. I'm Ryan, and I'm flying solo today to give you the Glicked Extravaganza. That's right, this is being touted as the new Barbenheimer. I'm giving you a double bill of Spoiler Alert today. Wicked and Gladiator II, but which film is going to come out of the arena unscathed? Last year, when I did the full Barbenheimer, I saw Barbie, then Oppenheimer, but a lot of people were like, you had to see Oppenheimer first, then Barbie. Whereas, yeah, I'm kind of happy with the way I did Barbenheimer. And with Glicked this time, I did the reverse. I watched Wicked first, and then Gladiator 2. And yeah, and unlike Barbenheimer last year, I didn't do the full Glicked. I watched them a day apart. I watched Wicked one day and then Gladiator 2 the other. I just do not have the schedule to do the full Glicked. So let's start off by talking about the basic white girls Avengers Infinity War, Wicked. Okay, so a few things you should know about me and Wicked. I went in extremely cold to this. Literally, the only thing I know about Wicked is defying gravity. And I have this vague recollection of seeing Wicked in 8th grade. And I ended up texting my friend who would have been a part of that musical. And he said, no, I believe we did Little Shop that year. And upon additional research, Wicked didn't come out until the early 2000s, which was when I was graduating high school. It would have been groundbreaking and revolutionary if my high school did Wicked in 1998. So, really, the only thing I know about Wicked is defying gravity and the fact that Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth are in this musical. So, with Wicked, I was not sold on this movie. I didn't like any of the trailers. I just didn't think I would gel with this movie, especially given I consider The Wizard of Oz to be one of the most timeless movies ever made. So I'm not sure about how you could do a prequel to The Wizard of Oz and make it work. But there are millions of basic white girls out there that consume the book, consume the musical, that audition for American Idol and The Voice with defying gravity. So who am I to know what's good and what's not? And the Wicked trailers didn't sell me as a musical. It was sold like a summer blockbuster. And that's a trend I can't stand with trailers for musicals, where they just market it as something it's not. A prime example of this was earlier this year, where Mean Girls, where you got Regina George singing, "My name's Regina George." And that's the only indication that this is a musical, because otherwise it advertises itself as a straight up remake of Mean Girls. So, needless to say, if you have a movie musical, for fuck's sake, advertise it as a movie musical. There are two prime examples of trailers I love that advertise themselves as movie musicals. There's the 6,000 minutes Rent trailer, which is just them singing 525,600 minutes with clips interspersed into it. But it's such a well-made and well-cut trailer that it sold me to a movie that I ended up seeing and ultimately hated. And there was, of course, the pre-COVID In the Heights trailer, where he's singing the In the Heights title song. Well, rapping, so to speak. And you feel the energy and vibrance of Washington Heights in this trailer. And it draws you into that world. And I was genuinely excited to see In the Heights. And I dug the hell out of In the Heights, so it makes perfect sense that John M. Chu, the director of that film, would go on to direct these two movies, which, if you were to tell me 13 years ago that the asshole who directed Gem and the Holograms would direct not one movie musical, but a two-part movie musical in addition to the fact, I would have told you to fuck off. There is no way this is going to work. And while we're on the subject of trailers, I just gotta get a little ADD here. You know how a major movie studio will have like their two big blockbuster trailers right before the movie starts? And it'll usually prelude with either that stupid Google Pixel and iPhone commercial telling you that AI is here to stay, get used to it, or it's preceded by that fucking schmaltzy Coca-Cola commercial where you have two clearly uncompensated film students unusually giddy about the fact they're excited to make, quote, content for the big screen, unquote. 5 words that make me die inside as a fucking human being. There are 2 trailers that ran before Wicked started. The first trailer was for The Bad Guys 2. It's animated in the same style as Puss in Boots. I mean, it looks like a solid little kid's flick that I could take the nephews to. But it did have a lot of cool animation to it, a lot of excitement, a lot of movement, and a lot of great textures. But it's not necessarily a movie I've run out to see. I'm like, okay, this looks fine, sure. The second trailer pissed me off so goddamn much. There's going to be a How to Train Your Dragon remake, right down to Gerard Butler reprising his role. And I just sat there and died a little inside. This is why you use animation. You use animation to tell the stories you want to tell. You use animation to make those dynamic scenes like Toothless's first fight in the first How to Train Your Dragon movie. Animation is a beautiful medium to use. And the fact that DreamWorks is reaching into the fucking content mill because they gotta make money somehow, and they decide, yeah, let's go ahead and remake this colorful, vibrant, animated kids movie with slight adult overtones to it. I mean, Hiccup gets his hand cut off, for fuck's sake, in that movie. It's 80s PG, and it treated children like adults. And this was also the first thing my nephew fell in love with, to the point that I spent the money and got him a Toothless at 5 years old. Not only did my nephew love this movie, I loved this movie. And it made me reevaluate that, yeah, animation is cinema. I find myself collecting Looney Tunes shorts on Blu-ray and DVD, and Tom and Jerry, because there's a lot you can learn from animation. And I'm just sitting there watching this gray Zack Snyder light looking remake of a movie that treated kids like adults being made just so they can just shit out another property. We don't need a How to Train Your Dragon live action remake. While we're at it, fuck Disney too. That's going to be a whole other video when I get to that. Oh, believe me, Robert Zemeckis, I am coming for your fucking ass. Go fuck yourself, Universal and DreamWorks, for even thinking that a live-action How to Train Your Dragon remake is a good idea. Wicked didn't come without controversy either, as Cynthia Erivo went insane over a fan edit of the poster made to look like the original poster. On the movie poster, you see Cynthia Erivo's eyes, and Ariana Grande's whispering to her. It's basically the same poster as on Broadway, but with Cynthia Erivo looking into you. And it's like, look, I'm a photographer. I get it. I hate when people make alterations to my photos myself. But sometimes you have to pick your battles. This is a musical with a rabid fandom. And for her to blow up on this fan who loved the musical to the point that she photoshopped the original poster, it's just kind of an overreaction. And I get Cynthia Erivo's original message, like she wants you to look into her eyes, was her response to that. And then she says, "This is worse than that AI thing I saw of me and Ariana Grande." It's right then and there that I realized that this looks like AI criticism is ridiculous. Going forward, I will never say anything looks like AI ever a fucking again. I mean, it's not like the OP photoshopped Idina Menzel's face onto hers. Sometimes you just gotta pick your battles. There was nothing wrong with the fan-made poster. While at the same time, I get what she's saying. It's how she said it that irritates me. I can't stand arrogance. And when you're out arroganting Ariana Grande, there is something wrong here. So, with that being said, 5 minutes of rambling aside, how do I feel about Wicked? Wicked is a movie that teeters from really fucking good to pretty good and back to really fucking good. And what's interesting about Wicked is that Crack.com, before they became a content farm under Warner Brothers Discovery, made an excellent case on how Glinda the Good Witch is actually the villain of the 1939 Wizard of Oz movie. And I pulled out my 4K of the Wizard of Oz, put it in with that context in mind, and of course the film in mind. And it's a valid theory. And Wicked is basically saying the exact same thing here. And straight away, there is already something cool I like with Wicked. I really loved the 1930s Universal Pictures logo that starts this movie off. It's basically the 1930s Universal logo, but it's made in the style of the modern logo, where you see the lettering come through, and then the camera pulls back, and then you're seeing a universal picture swirl across the globe diagonally like it was in the 1930s. And one of my weird internet rabbit holes is watching movie and TV logo compilations. Sometimes they will play the same 1970s Universal Pictures logo like 20 times, but it's oddly soothing. So when I see a cool logo variant like that, I applaud the effort. So now let's talk about the movie proper. And I'm just going to say this straight away. Ariana Grande outshines Selena Gomez and Amelia Perez singing whistle notes on her first number. Yep, I'm an Arianator. And I'm just going to say it. She is definitely winning Best Supporting Actress musical or comedy at the Golden Globes because the Golden Globes want her ass there. One of the world's biggest pop stars on the planet. Oh, sure, let's just go ahead and give her a Golden Globe. Ariana Grande's performance in Wicked is the polar opposite of Selena Gomez's performance in Amelia Perez. Whereas Selena Gomez and Amelia Perez, she is punching below her weight class in that movie. She does not fit the vibe of this. She is just there for social media advertising, so her stans could say shit like, Selena Gomez served cunt left, right, and center. Selena Gomez ate and didn't leave no crumbs. That's why she was there for Amelia Perez. Whereas when I was watching this movie, I said to myself, this needs a Melissa Barrera. You know, the actress who was being canceled for being pro-Palestine. That role Selena Gomez plays in Amelia Perez needs Melissa Barrera. Because one, she can sing, and two, she's actually from Mexico. Meanwhile, Ariana Grande, straight away in this film, is charming as hell. She's singing whistle notes in her very first number, and she's great at straddling both the good and evil aspects of Glinda the Good Witch in this opening sequence, as it starts off with this big, elaborate MGM musical style number celebrating the death of the Wicked Witch. And the film starts right after Dorothy splashes the water on the Wicked Witch of the West, or Elphaba. What John M. Chu does so well is he clearly loves MGM musicals. You're seeing the realistic sets and the fantastic choreography. And hell, you're seeing the MGM Wizard of Oz characters in the background. When we get to meet Glinda for the first time, she's asked by somebody off screen, "Did you know the Wicked Witch of the West?" And then she just says simply she went to school with her. And this is where we meet Elphaba, who is the Wicked Witch of the West, so to speak. She's the black sheep of her family because she is green, and her mother got pissed drunk on green alcohol and cheated on her husband. We also meet Elphaba's sister, Nessa Rose, who's paraplegic. She is directly blamed for Nessa Rose being paraplegic, and she is tasked to look at her as she goes to, am I reading this right? Shiz University? Shiz. And Glinda in this film is known as Galinda. And Galinda is basically the Regina George of Shiz University. And one of the scenes I really like, and this is a bit of a recurring gag here, where Elphaba nonchalantly says, "No, I'm not seasick. No, I didn't eat grass as a child. And yes, I've always been green." I like that she straight away just says, "Yeah, I'm green. Fucking deal with it." And that's the kind of confidence I like in her character. And while I praise the hell out of Ariana Grande, we gotta give love to Cynthia Erivo too. Bitter anger about movie posters aside, Cynthia Erivo kind of earns the right to be angry about that poster. She is excellent in this film, as she too is straddling this balance of good and evil, whereas she wants to be accepted, but also has these powers. She feels like she's the only person she can relate to. Everybody doesn't like her. She already feels ostracized by the world. She doesn't have a friend to call her own. And then she gets angry, and then her magic activates, in which we meet Madame Morrible, who's played by Michelle Yeoh, and she takes notice of Elphaba and claims it was her that did it. Michelle Yeoh's character basically saves her ass. And another thing I really want to comment on is the fantastic chemistry Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande have. Their chemistry together is genuinely fucking great. When they're friends and when they're enemies, I bought these two together. And there's a great song here called "What Is This Feeling?" in which Elphaba just bluntly describes Galinda as blonde, while Galinda talks an elaborate description of her. That's genuinely funny. I like that. And I'll just say it, they have more white-hot sexual chemistry together than either of them do with the Prince, who's played by Jonathan Bailey of Bridgerton. I haven't seen Bridgerton yet, so I'm not entirely familiar with him. But for him being the douche bro Prince, he does a really good job too. Ariana Grande kind of hinted that there was a little bit of attraction to Elphaba with Glinda, and Kristen Chenoweth kind of confirmed this, as she was the original Glinda in the Wicked Broadway musical. So there is something to be said there. And I kind of like the angle they play it. They have such great chemistry together that if they kissed, I wouldn't have been surprised. And then we get to Dr. Dillamond, who is a talking goat who is afraid the talking animals of Oz are losing their civil rights. And Dr. Dillamond, of course, is played by Peter Dinklage. And while Dr. Oz is talking and doing roll call, Dr. Dillamond keeps mispronouncing Galinda's name as Glinda. And Glinda just goes fucking apeshit on him. Like, you pronounce it correctly. It's Galinda, not Glinda. Galinda. And there seems to be a little theory floating around that the reason Peter Dinklage went apeshit over Disney's Snow White live-action remake was because he wanted to be the only dwarf actor in town. And when you see the first set photos of the dwarves in Snow White, where they all look like hipster douchebags of varying heights, and then when you see the final, like, first look photo, they look like the actual seven dwarves in what could best be described as crunch time to get a trailer out. I hate to say this, but Wicked pretty much confirms this Peter Dinklage theory, as we see a munchkin named Bach, who is actually 5'7" and dating Ariana Grande in real life. Hell, her relationship with this actor, Ethan Slater, is the subject of her lead-off single off her new album, Eternal Sunshine, called Yes And. And Bach is this so-called munchkin who is basically a friend-zone cuck for Galinda. It's like, this film wants to be PC in every other area, but having actors with dwarfism that aren't Peter Dinklage. So when you're seeing like a bunch of like regular people in Munchkin Land, it just kind of throws you off. It's like, wait, shouldn't there be some little people here? Shouldn't we mix this up a little bit? Because we already have Galinda with her plastics, in which you have Bowen Yang playing every sassy gay stereotype character ever. And this girl they got that because they clearly couldn't afford the plus size girl from Bridgerton. They already had their Bridgerton cast member. They couldn't exactly have two. What's frustrating about Wicked is that there is a 3-hour plus 5-star movie musical here. There is a lot of A+ shit that happens in this movie, which is ultimately bogged down by this film essentially being the Mean Girls musical remake from this year, but set at Hogwarts. And that's kind of frustrating to me because I was less interested in the high school drama bullshit. Well, college drama bullshit, technically. But the actual conflict and actual turmoil of these characters, of Elphaba and Glinda, that's what draws me into this movie. And this film does a fantastic job illustrating that. How these two actually started out as friends and then become bitter enemies, to which one is marked wicked and one is marked good. And as the film progresses, Fiyero gets a little meet cute scene with Elphaba, in which they have their little meet cute together, and then a few minutes later, we get to see Fiyero come in, do a big musical number, and he's got all the girls and guys wet, including Bowen Yang's character, in which he just tells them to move aside, and he's like, yes, sir. And Galinda asks Bach to date Nessa Rose, Elphaba's sister, so she can get with Prince Fiyero. And then, in a turn of events, Bach actually grows acquainted with Nessa Rose. But during this big dance number they have, they're at like some Asian nightclub. Elphaba is able to convince Morrible to take Galinda under Morrible's wing. And because of that action, Elphaba and Galinda become friends. And while this is happening, Dr. Dillamond is forced out of his position, and a professor demonstrates how cages work, complete with a scared lion cub. It's here Galinda becomes every lily white, trust fund, performative Twitter leftist, and decides to change her name to Glinda, thinking she did something good, when in reality, what she did was the equivalent of the Kendall Jenner Pepsi commercial. And it's here we start to see Glinda's manipulation. It's here where we get to see Glinda being a master of manipulation because everybody's following suit. Everybody's like, yes, Queen, you go. Yeah, change her name. Stand up for Dr. Dillamond's rights. When earlier in the film, she was shit-talking him for the crime of mispronouncing her name. And while all this is happening, Elphaba gets an invite to see the Wizard of Oz, and Glinda goes with her. And another frustration I have with Wicked is I'm also not a big fan of like 2-part movies. There has to be a very valid reason for these films to be 2 parts. Like, for example, I hated Mockingjay 1 and 2 because you could have did that as one 2.5, 3 hour long movie. Because the first one is just exposition dump after exposition dump. And the second one is all action. But because the MCU exists and Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame exist, we gotta make this a two-part epic. As evidenced by films like Titanic, the two Avatar movies, Oppenheimer, and hell, even Avengers Endgame. If you have a 3 hour long length and you can justify it, people will come. There's no need to do two 2.5 hour movies in which one of them's going to be all exposition and the other is going to be all action. And that's what frustrates me because Universal just wants Wicked fans to double dip. Whereas I feel the audience could be treated with a little more respect. Now, in the act of fairness, John M. Chu said he wanted to explore the backstories of both Elphaba and Glinda. And yes, that's all fair, but at the end of the day, their backstory is the Mean Girls musical, but set at Hogwarts. That's not quite interesting to me. When we already have a Mean Girls musical that came out earlier this year that illustrated exactly that. And again, this would have been 5-star territory if Universal just trusted its audience. But then we get to what I feel is the best part of this movie. The Emerald City stuff kicked my ass. I fucking love this third act. This is where Wicked goes from being pretty good to really fucking good. This last half hour fucking ruled. And when exiting the theater, I couldn't help but think of a video Patrick Willems recently did on Streets of Fire, where he talks about how the first 15 minutes and the last 15 minutes are some of the best filmmaking you could possibly imagine. And the middle is just, eh. I feel the same way too, by the way. I love Streets of Fire, but even I can admit that. Also, Diane Lane in that movie, damn. And that goes back to Wicked, because that wonderful MGM style opening sequence that sets this movie up had me hook, line, and sinker. I was like, oh yes, I am so on board with this movie. Any and all negative thoughts I had of Wicked went out the fucking window. And then the happy, excited Ryan came back for the third act. As we're welcomed into Oz, we get a whole song and dance sequence in Emerald City, complete with applause pop cameos from Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth. And then Jeff Goldblum comes in and fucking kills it as the Wizard of Oz. And what's really cool about this, too, is that he's got a surprisingly good singing voice and does a little bit of a soft shoe routine. And it's kind of fun seeing Jeff Goldblum do a role like this. Like, Jeff Goldblum was born to appear in a movie musical. I don't know what role, but he was born to do this. Like, hell, I'd argue a supporting actor nomination for Goldblum in this. But he's also intimidating as hell when he's pulling the levers as the Wizard of Oz. His voice sounds intimidating as hell, filtered. So, when you think, yeah, imagine that voice filtered.
Yeah,
While this is going on, Elphaba is able to read the Grimoire, a book of spells, but she can't undo the magic, which gives birth to the flying monkeys from the 1939 film. So, Elphaba already figures out the wizard has no real powers and wants to use her. And then we cut to the most kick-ass ending. One of the most kick-ass endings of the year. In a year full of kick-ass endings. Whether it's the tennis match from Challengers, Monstro Alyssa Sue going apeshit in the third act of The Substance, or the shockingly Shakespearean third act of Transformers 1, a movie that starts off as a cynical toy sale and then evolves into the Shakespearean tragedy in which I suddenly and immediately gave a shit about. Optimus Prime and Megatron being voiced by Chris Hemsworth and Brian Tyree Henry. And now we cue Defying Gravity. And this whole fucking sequence is a Scene of the Year candidate. And Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande bring the fucking house down for this. Basic White Girls, I get Defying Gravity now that I've seen the context of the scene. I get why, if you do go on American Idol or The Voice, you audition that. Because that is a genuinely fucking hard song to sing. But there are two particular harmonies in this version of Defying Gravity that just proves Erivo and Grande were the right choices for these roles. I'll play both of those for you. Copyright be damned.
With you and I defying gravity, I hope you're happy in the end.
I mean, if I had a nickel for the number of films based on IP that I watched that this year that had awesome, damn near Shakespearean third acts, then I'd have 2 nickels. But you know, it's weird it happened twice, as the old meme adage goes. And during the scene, Elphaba is shocked that the trust fund baby wants to maintain the status quo. And that Glinda is actually a performative little bitch. And then Elphaba ends up grabbing a broom and nearly falls to her doom. But in this moment, she learns how to control her magic, how to turn that rage into a positive force. And then we cut to Madame Morrible, which is like the biggest, let me guess, she's the villain reveal ever. The moment she's introduced, I'm like, she's the first Asian ever to win Best Actress. She is going to be the villain. Just cut to the chase. And this is what I mean when I say Wicked really should have been one kick-ass 5-star movie musical. Because the stuff that works really fucking works. And it's in this moment that Madame Morrible declares Elphaba as a wicked witch. And then we hear the final notes of that song. As Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande are having this sing-off. And it's more intense than any action movie I've seen this year. And I felt for the Wicked Witch of the West in this moment, as Glinda has Madame Morrible and Oz right behind her. And there's one particular line in that song, and it's probably the most quoted line of the song. If I'm flying solo, at least I know I'm flying free. And I know I'm probably loosely paraphrasing it. I know every basic white girl is going to be in the comments saying, no, you got the lyrics wrong. But that final chorus hit of Defying Gravity, as Cynthia Erivo hits that high note, has me genuinely curious, has me excited for part 2. Even though I know it's probably going to be all action at this point. But we are to have a part 2. This really should not be a 2-hour and 40-minute long movie. This should be like 2 hours, 15 minutes tops. Not only is Wicked a sincere love letter to MGM musicals, more specifically to The Wizard of Oz, but a compelling story about isolation and loneliness. And kudos, Steven Schwartz and Crack.com. You convinced me that Glinda the Good Witch is actually a fucking bitch. But what are the Oscar plays here? I can see this getting into the technicals, production design, costume design, cinematography. I do see supporting actress for Ariana Grande, and I definitely do see actress for Cynthia Erivo, but I think Grande is going to be the odds-on favorite of the two, especially given that the Academy is going to want one of the biggest pop stars on the planet to attend their ceremony. So they're going to give her a Best Supporting Actress nomination just for that. And even then, it would be well-deserved. Like, if Selena Gomez got the Best Supporting Actress nomination over Ariana Grande, I'd be fucking pissed. just because Emilia Perez is the buzzy tailor-made for the Criterion Collection movie the Academy always fawns for. I think Wicked should also be nominated for Best Director and Best Picture as well. I think this is a worthy candidate for Best Director and Best Picture. I don't know if it'll get nominated into those categories, but I think the Academy should consider Wicked. I was genuinely surprised as to how good this was. Even if I wasn't vibing with the Shiz University stuff, the other stuff, the internal conflict of both characters, the musical numbers, the more action-oriented pieces of this film fucking work for me. So, needless to say, I'm going to go ahead and give Wicked a very, very high 3.5 out of 5. It was almost a 4. But at the end of the day, we already have a Mean Girls musical. And it just came out earlier this year. Had we not have gotten the Mean Girls musical, this would have easily been a 4 and would have been an honorable mention on my favorite films list. So let's go from PG to hard fucking R with Gladiator II. And of fucking course, I get both the combination of boomer screaming and crying baby screaming during this. Boomer screenings are the fucking worst because they take full advantage of their 25-cent senior discount to talk all over the movie and about random shit too. Like, Elvis was like the worst candidate for this because they would talk about anything and everything over the movie. And even random shit too, like, is that Tom Hanks? Or, why is there a rap song playing over this? And my God, these guys would not shut the fuck up during the trailers. Which, yeah, I expect talking, but they were talking at like full fucking volume. And then you add to this combination a crying baby at an R-rated movie, and it's like you lose faith in humanity because that same fucking baby kept crying like every half hour. So with all that said, there's been talk of a Gladiator II for years now, specifically with a gonzo-ass treatment that would have had Maximus fight his way out of hell. And it was going to be written by Nick Cave, as in the musician Nick Cave. And I'm like, go on. You have me intrigued. Continue this pitch. Because that's the gonzo fucking shit I live for. On my Blue Sky account, by the way, go subscribe to Blue Sky. Blue Sky is one of the most wonderful social media sites I've ever been on. newromsmedia.bsky.social if you want to follow me there. And on Blue Sky, there was this prompt that asked you to defend a movie that was under 5 on IMDb. And I chose Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band because, yeah, it is deemed universally a bad movie, but at the same time, we got all-timer covers of Got to Get You Into My Life and Come Together out of that movie. We got the Bee Gees doing some really solid Sgt. Pepper's covers. And I was reminded of Robin Gibb's cover from one of the people who responded to me about that. I was like, oh my God, this is actually on par with Oh Darling. And I love gonzo coke-fueled movies like that. Like Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Like, this Gladiator II is prime gonzo coke-fueled cinema. That's the stuff I live for. And if that movie were to have existed, I would have called it one of the all-time great movie sequels. Because Russell Crowe fighting his way out of hell? Yeah, hell yes, I'm on board for that. And there's a lot of people saying that John Wick 5 should be that. And it's like, I'd rather John Wick be dead. But let's be real, they're going to bring him back some way because you didn't see a funeral. He's probably hiding out somewhere. Lionsgate is not going to let that cash cow die. This is their worst year financially. But then we get Gladiator 2, and yep, it's Gladiator 2, all right. But there are some things I do like about this movie. The film starts off with a really cool oil-painted style animated sequence that recaps the events of the first Gladiator movie. Denzel Washington is cool as hell in this movie, whereas he's basically playing Denzel Washington, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, go on, go ahead, play Denzel Washington. I'm still riding with you, dude. And then you have Pedro Pascal in this movie, and he's excellent in it too. And the film stars on Connie Nielsen's character, Lucilla, from the first Gladiator movie, who had a bit of a romantic fling with Maximus. And we'll get more to that later as to how it progresses with the film. But the film starts off as Lucius, the kid who was a fan of Maximus in the first film, is now grown up and has a wife. And Lucius and the wife are two soldiers that are fighting against Marcus Acacius, who is played by Pedro Pascal in this movie. And then Marcus Acacius kills his wife. And then we get like that really cool dream sequence from the first movie, where it's filmed in a tinted blue, and you're seeing Lucius lie on the ground as his wife is being taken away by death on a boat. And then Lucius gets up and he notices the arrow through his wife's chest, plucks the shard of arrow out of her chest, and he gets pulled out of the water and is sold as a slave. So basically, yeah, it's the first Gladiator, but with the dead guy from All the Strangers. And I rewatched Gladiator for the first time in 24 years. I thought, I'm 4 years old. I was 16 at the time of that film's release, and maybe I could appreciate it a lot more that I'm older. And the other reason I watched Gladiator on 4K was because I bought a 2-pack with that in Braveheart, because it was way cheaper to get the 2-pack than it was at the time to get Braveheart on 4K. And Gladiator looks great in 4K, by the way, but controversial opinion time, I think the first Gladiator movie is boring. It's boring mid-tier Ridley Scott. How it won Best Picture is beyond me. Now, Braveheart, on the other hand, I got why that won Best Picture. Though I did notice an extended cut. So I'm going to throw it to the two people who listen to my podcast. Is the extended cut of Gladiator worth checking out? Because I just get this feeling that there are scenes missing from the first Gladiator film that could have provided more context or could have been expanded upon more. And I think the extended cut could have actually did that. So if it's worth checking out, just let me know. I'll give it a second chance and watch the extended cut. So with my thoughts on Gladiator out of the way, we are then welcome back to Gladiator 2, as we are welcome with butt-ugly CGI baboon dog hybrid things that Lucius has to fight. And these baboon dog hybrid looking things look like they would have been a direct-to-video Jurassic Park knockoff in 1995. And Lucius ends up defeating these CGI monstrosities and gets kind of a reputation for eating monkeys. And then we meet Denzel Washington's Magnus. And that's what I felt the first Gladiator was missing. An actor that was just chewing the scenery like it's the finest Kobe beef you could possibly eat and savor. And that's exactly what Denzel does as Magnus. And every time he was on screen, I was invested. And like I said, I didn't care that he was basically playing Denzel. He's Denzel fucking Washington. He can do whatever the fuck he wants. And even then, he's been proven to do some killer Shakespeare. The Tragedy of Macbeth is a great fucking movie if you haven't seen it. I'm eagerly awaiting a Blu-ray release of that because Denzel Washington is awesome in that movie. So him sliding into Roman times makes perfect fucking sense. And I like that Denzel Washington's character is basically Alonzo from Training Day, but he's a slave owner. And he's manipulating the parties. And going back to Connie Nielsen, she ends up becoming the central character of this film, as she is the only returning cast member, given that, well, everyone in the first film is dead. She totally comes into play here as Lucilla, and she is excellent, especially in the scenes involving Lucius. But there is one issue I'm going to get with Pedro Pascal's character, and I'll get to that a little later in the podcast, but he's still really solid. He's still really good in this film. And then you have Joseph Quinn and Fred Hessinger, the latter I just saw as a neurotic grandson in Thelma. And these two are clearly having the time of their lives as the Emperors Geta and Caracalla. I kind of like the idea of yassified Eddie Munson doing evil shit, whereas Fred Hessinger in Gladiator II would have thrown Thelma's ass in the Coliseum to die by the butt-ugly CGI baboon dog hybrids. Though, I gotta give credit where credit is due. I love Fred Hessinger's range of going from neurotic worrywart grandson to evil fucking emperor. But this gets to my main problem with Gladiator 2. Paul Mescal is just total deadweight. This role needs an Austin Butler or a Jacob Elordi. Hell, I'd even accept Barry Keoghan. Somebody who radiates a masculine energy. Somebody you believe will die for his country. And that's the main reason why Russell Crowe is fucking great in Gladiator, is that you buy Maximus has done some heinous shit. It's not that Paul Mescal is like the worst character in this movie. He's just okay in this movie. He clearly can't carry a film. I just do not buy him as this huge badass. In the time frame of Gladiator, Russell Crowe was beating the shit out of people at the time to the point that it became a South Park subplot. But what does work about Paul Mescal's character are the more dramatic elements with Lucius. Let's just get the big reveal out of the way, because the trailers kind of telegraphed this. Lucius is Maximus and Lucilla's bastard child. The same kid who was a big fan of him in the first film, little did he know he was talking to his father, basically. And while this is all going on, Macrinus promises Acacius to Lucius because of Lucius's fighting skills. Acacius in this film being played by Pedro Pascal, of course. But there's another big reveal to this, as it's revealed that Acacius is married to Lucilla, and Acacius wants a break from fighting. But the emperors want to conquer India and Persia, so he has to go back into battle. And it's here that Lucius recites Virgil and Lucinda puts two and two together. That's another main problem I have with this movie. It's also the same problem I kind of have with Wicked. It takes so long to state the fucking obvious that Lucius is Maximus's son. And it's revealed that Lucilla sends him away from Rome to protect him. And while Lucius is fighting in the Coliseum, he aims a crossbow at Acacius and misses during this big naval battle and all this crazy shit going on. And it's a pretty cool sequence too. In fact, it's the coolest gladiator sequence in the film. And then Lucilla comes to Lucius's cell, and it's revealed he's pissed about how he was sent away and that her new husband killed his wife. And then Macrinus arrests Acacius and Lucilla for treason. And this is where I'm going to come into play with my issue with Pedro Pascal's character. I think this character would have worked better if he was a villain. Because it seems as though Pedro Pascal has it in his contract that he has to be an altruistic good guy no matter what, since The Mandalorian. And I kind of like the angle of Din Djarin playing this evil motherfucker who is married to his mother. This is a genuinely interesting conflict this film could have had. And it kind of throws that away, just turning him into a good guy. However, Macinrus gives Lucius his wish. He gets the chance to execute Acacius. With Acacius here, at the end of the day, Acacius had Lucius's wife killed. It doesn't make sense for him to turn face. So they end up dueling as Acacius apologizes for killing his wife. Lucius chooses not to deliver the death blow, but Acacius gets executed by the Praetorian guards in the audience. Macinrus convinces the twins to turn against each other, and Caracalla kills and beheads Geta. Fred Hessinger kills Joseph Quinn. And it's at this point, Geta becomes insane and names his pet monkey Consul, causing Macinrus to look to overthrow him in the Senate. And then Lucius and Lucilla reconcile, and Lucilla gives him her ring and tells him she is Maximus's son, which is like the big well-duh reveal. And then we get to the big third act where Lucilla is in the Coliseum and she's chained up, and Lucius is now sporting his father's sword and armor and has to basically fight for her honor, in which he finds out about Maximus's grave, which has his armor and his sword through his doctor, Ravi, as Lucius ends up telling Ravi, hey, give this ring as proof that I am heir to the throne, because everybody's turning on everybody at this point. And while this is going on, Lucius urges the gladiators to fight their slavers. And then Macinrus kills Caracalla and Lucilla and flees on horseback with Lucius giving chase. And then Macinrus and Lucius fight. Lucius almost dies underwater, but he hears the voice of Lucilla and grabs a rock. He then kills Macinrus and unites both armies, revealing himself to be the heir to the throne. And you want to know something? I'm going to go ahead and give this a 3 out of 5. While I liked Gladiator II a little better than the first one, at the end of the day, it's still the first Gladiator with a happy-ish ending. It's just perfectly fine. It kind of begs the question, did we really need a sequel to Gladiator? My thoughts on Gladiator being just okay being put to the side. Because at the end of the day, Gladiator still won the Oscar for Best Picture. It's still a well-regarded classic in cinema. And to make a sequel to this film kind of cheapens it. There are sequels that are very few and far between as S-tier as their predecessor, like The Godfather Part 2 or The Dark Knight. Gladiator 2, while I liked it a tad better than the first one, just doesn't do anything original with it. I would have rather seen Nick Cave's treatment of this. If you're going to do a Gladiator 2, go fucking crazy with it. Don't give me the first Gladiator all over again with the buzzy actor everybody likes. Just give me a Gladiator movie that could actually be a worthy successor to it. And needless to say, of the two films, I liked Wicked better. So that should come as no surprise. And while we're on this topic, I have an announcement I'd like to make. I am going to bring back Ryan Watches. They are going to be under 3-minute long shorts. I have a lot of great movies lined up for Ryan Watches that I have reviews already lined up for. They're going to be done in the style of this podcast, mostly still pictures, but with a couple clips thrown in. So that way I could get my thoughts out a lot quicker. And they're going to be 3 minutes in under shorts going forward. There's still going to be B-flat spoiler-free reviews. They're just going to be shorts. And I am also going to start work on Fat Slob on Silent Bob for the 4:30 movie. I just got the 4K for that. I'm going to sit down, watch that, take proper notes, and I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a full Fat Slob on Silent Bob episode for that. Be sure to like, comment, share, spread the word of New Realms Media. Follow me on all my socials at New Realms Media. And until then, are you not defying gravity?